All right. Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and wherever you are listening to the Fuchsia Tent. I am your host, as always, Kacy Fleming. It has been a minute since I've been in here. I've been in here one other time this year, which is insane because I think I was in here 4,000 times last year. But we're doing the research now, and that takes a lot of work. And I am really trying to cultivate the conversations that this audience has asked for. And I have a phenomenal practitioner with us today. And I'm going to tell you all about Dr. Sarah Berg in just a second, but we are going to get into brain health, brain fog, all of those types of things that happen to us in midlife that can really suck out our confidence. So, Dr. Sarah Berg is the founder of Self-40, an online education platform making evidence-based menopause education accessible and engaging through digital courses and resources. I love it. I love having doctor-led content because it is so confusing for women out there today. Uh, Dr. Berg has 10 plus years as a clinical OBGYN. She writes and speaks nationally on menopause as both a public health and a workplace issue. She's been featured in Katie Couric Media, is a regular contributor to Unbiased Science, addressing emerging research and common misconceptions in women's health. Dr. Berg bridges the gap between clinical science and real world understanding. Her work translates complex medical menopause research into clear, practical education designed to help women feel informed and supported rather than confused and dismissed, which is where we spend most of our lives. She brings both clinical depth and a public health lens to the conversation about midlife cognition. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello, I'm so honored to be here and excited to talk with you about this, which I think is such an important topic, especially for your audience.
And not talked about enough, right? Like,
Absolutely. And I think that's the problem. Because it's not talked about, women think they're living it alone, which has led to why so many women feel isolated and off during this period, and why they feed into all the stereotypes. They think, oh, I am past my prime. I'm too old to do this. What people said about women of a certain age must be true. And again, it's all false. We have data for it. But if we don't know it, we can't live it.
that's right. And we hear so many women say, we've even talked about it as a symptom, not feeling like myself. We also hear women say, I thought I was losing my mind. So let's start with the big picture. Please don't mind my dog jumping up in the background. Otto tends to do that. He's become very fond of the camera over the last year and a half. When women in midlife say they feel like their brain isn't working the way that it used to, what is actually happening? Can we talk a little bit about the biology behind that not feeling like we used to in perimenopause or menopause? What's actually happening in the brain?
This is a great starting point because if we know what's happening in our body, I feel like it helps us understand and feel more confident in what's going on that comes out of us. So, the biology, and I think a part of this that we don't get taught is that estrogen isn't just a reproductive organ. Estrogen feeds our entire body. And one of the main places it goes to, and why you have this feeling during this time, is because it feeds especially to the brain. And so during perimenopause and menopause, I call it like if you live in the city of New York and it's shiny and bright and lights are going, and all of a sudden it starts having a flicker or a power, not outage, but like a brownout. So things aren't working like they used to because we know during perimenopause, the estrogen hormone isn't just going down like casually, it's going up, it's going down, it's going all over the place. So you're getting these mixed signals to your brain from estrogen. And it hits especially the estrogen rich areas in your brain are the areas people talk about all the time. First is the prefrontal cortex, so the very front of the brain. And that is what I call the secretary or the executive assistant of your brain. It's helping us organize and figure out how to modulate what we're going to say. It's why we're such good multitaskers. So, first, we're getting big signals there. And we're getting another big place is the hippocampus, where we keep our memory. So that's why we're having problems with word searching and reaching back for something that maybe happened a day or two ago. One of my favorite memes is when someone's talking about how they can remember every word from a song in the 90s, a rap song that we sung on the way to school, but they can't remember the conversation they had 2 minutes ago. That's it. The estrogen not getting sparked there as consistently is causing that change. And again, it hits a lot of other areas. We know we're thinking about the thermostat of our brain, we're thinking the amygdala where we have our emotions. So, but those are the two, especially at work, that we're noticing the change. So there is a real scientific reason you're having this brownout in the brain, but it's transient. And that's what I want people to remember. They think I'm going down and this is who I am and I'm never going to be myself again. But many people within 2 years after completing menopause feel this buffering kind of resolved. Their brain's figured out this new place and you're back to action again. So it's not permanent either.
And that's without therapy, right? So that's without HRT. That's without doing anything to affect it. It naturally can go back, which I think is relieving for so many women. And you bring such a great point because there is something about not knowing what's happening that's so much more terrifying than what is actually happening, especially because we hear all these startling statistics around Alzheimer's in women. We many of us know or love somebody who's gone through some form of dementia, which is a very traumatic experience to have as a family member and is a huge fear for so many people. So I think when we start having some of that decline, the initial assumption is, oh my God, this is forever, or I'm broken, or what happened. But there are actual, areas of our brain that are affected by not getting the estrogen. And so that is, I think, hugely relieving, right? To kind of hear those two things. I always love the menopause brain because Dr. Lisa Musconi talks about that. And that was the first time I felt better about it.
Oh my gosh, I love her TED Talk. Everyone, go listen to her TED Talk. It is fascinating. And then you're going to want to immediately going to read all her books, and they're really well done. And so I know people don't love digging into a book, especially thinking about science, but she is a great at telling you about the brain. I mean, she is the expert of the brain. So yes, Mosconi is amazing. And
So
there's
let me,
one, oh,
oh,
go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. No, you go, please.
No, 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 no.
I was going to ask, how early can these shifts begin? Because one of the things we hear so frequently is this happens much younger for women, or they're having symptoms, but they're not equating them at all to hormonal transitioning. How early can it start?
So for a lot of women, majority of women in their early 40s, but some in the natural state of their menopause, not in an early menopause, will have it in their late 30s. And so think about it. Think about what's going on in your life during that time. You may, if you have children, they may still be younger. So you may be thinking, is this still my kid brain? And then you're also in that time period where your parents may be needing more care and help. So you're thinking, I'm just stretching myself too thin. And I think as physicians, we have always been taught that it's the period changes that happens first. But as we do more research, we're finding that a lot of times the brain changes are what are the first trigger, and then the period changes happen. So even before you start having changes in your cycle, you may be having some of these brain effects from the estrogen rebuffering.
I wonder how we do a better PR campaign for the other side effects of perimenopause, like brain fog, like anxiety, like depression, trouble with word retrieval. These are the things that are so terrifying for women. Hot flashes you can feel, right? So they're horrible and they have a horrible path if we don't take care of them. But I think some of these brain symptoms are much more terrifying for women, especially when they use their minds to work. Um, we hear a lot about the brain fog. We hear a lot about word retrieval in the Fuchsia Tent. We hear a lot about difficulty concentrating and forgetting things. How do you help patients understand or isolate, which of these things are being driven by your hormones, which of these things are being driven by lack of sleep, which could also be attributed to hormones, which of these things come from stress. It's what I call, before I say it, it's what I call the midlife collision. It's like two barges, your work barge and your home barge coming at each other 20 knots with like hormones shaking you underneath, right? And you're like destined to have things fall off of your containers, your ships. How do you help people distinguish, or how can women start to distinguish for themselves what's what?
That is a great question. And I love that analogy. That makes so much sense. And I may co-opt it, but always use your name that I got it from
I
you. But
care.
I love that. The shaking barges and things falling off, because that's exactly the story I get in the clinic all the time. Part of it is because there's so many things going on, it can be very difficult to separate them out. But a lot of the ways we talk about and treat what's going on may not need us to really separate out what's going on. It's just an understanding of it. So, if you've got a lot going on in your home life, and again, I tell this to everyone, it's not something that's a, oh, you've got a problem, but everyone should be going to therapy. Everyone should have an outlet that is not someone that feels guilty of telling you the real truth about what they're hearing from you, and someone, and when you're paying someone, you feel like you can really open up and give the business. So therapy, it's a great way to wheedle out what are some of the behavioral and environmental cues affecting you and getting good coping mechanisms there. And then at the same time, it's never a bad idea to talk to your physician and say, is this perimenopause and menopause? I have been dealing with this situation and really tracking it. So not just saying, I think I may be in perimenopause and having them be like, why? Like say, this happened here, this happened here, this happened here, this is what's going on. These are my concerns so that they can answer them appropriately. And I know there's a big fear in hormonal therapy, but and I know that's a whole topic we could talk about, but seeing if hormonal therapy is in the cards for you, or if you're not interested in it, there are other medications that we can use that could help with these changes that are going on. Like you said, with these multifactorial reasons. If it's around sleep, if it's around hot flashes, are we seeing if we affect those, how it affects our brain? I mean, they all play in together. And then having a community. Like I love the Fuchsia Tent. It's a community of people kind of living in it, that it's a safe space to talk about things. And it's a safe space, especially because this is more of a professional woman community, a safe place to say, this is my business concern. This is what's going on at work. What have you been doing that's been working for you? And having some ways you can work around this buffer time.
I think it's interesting. You said so much there that I want to address. I think therapy is such an important option, and the good news is, for most working women, um, over 90% of organizations have some form of mental health coverage, whether it's an employee assistance program or in your behavioral health package in your medical insurance, or they have a separate benefit like a Lyra or something like that. Most people who work have access to this as part of a company benefit. Also, for women who work in the home, if your partner works for a corporation and you have shared insurance, often you can access those things as well as EAP. Um, I think you bring up another really interesting point around hormone replacement therapy, and thankfully we're meeting at a time where the FDA has recommended removing the black box from estrogen. And I know that was originally vaginal estrogen, but it ended up saying all estrogen products. Talk a little bit about hormone replacement therapy and the place it can serve when it comes to brain health, particularly memory, anxiety, depression, cognition, kind of all of these things that come along with it.
Oh, that's perfect. I love the segue. So hormone therapy, we have some really great data coming out. So again, we went a long time without really talking about it because we had that study that made us think that hormone therapy was going to give you dementia, which is not what the facts said. And I'm just putting that out there as solidly as I can. But what we're learning is that when you start hormone therapy, in the earlier, when you're starting to have these symptoms, before you've been through menopause for over 10 years, you likely will see cognitive benefits from being on hormone therapy. And we think that it could help protect your brain long term against some of the things that we're most scared about, dementia, Alzheimer's, the big scary things that we know women are more likely to get than men. And it's not just because of age, we now know. We used to be told, oh, it's just women live longer than men. That's why we get it. False, just like Dwight says on The Office. Um, but it is know that when we start earlier. Now, the study scared people because most of the people in the study were older than that 10 years out from being through menopause and over 65. So we know when we start it later in life, that's where the problems start because we've already caused a lot of plaque we know and going this is going to go into the heart side of it when we go through the hormone transition, our vessels, which our blood vessels go everywhere from our heart, especially to our brain, they get stiffer and they're less flexible. And so we end up building up more plaque in those areas. So think about it that way. We have plaque that's now in our brain. And if we start this medication and it's trying to make that vessel flimsy again, it's going to throw those plaque around, which increases your risk of stroke and clots. And we really don't want stroke and clots in our brain. So when we start later in life, that's why we saw the scary data. But when we start earlier, it could be a protective. And I have to say could because we don't have 100% because we haven't had the time to get that data out. But it's looking very positive. And one thing we talked about Lisa Moscano earlier, but one thing she's doing that's really exciting that you can visualize, and I love seeing you can visualize things. She's looking at things called PET scans, which are scans we use a lot with people with cancer because it's looking for sugar uptake or glucose uptake. And we know your brain is an organ and it uses sugar to do its functioning. So she shows us with these PET scans that the sugar function, how it's being used, isn't working as well during that time, which is why it's not functioning as well. Think about it. When you get a sugar low or you haven't eaten or you're hangry, your body shuts down. Well, that's what's happening in your brain. Your brain isn't processing that sugar as well, so it's shutting down. So if we do things to keep that flow going, it could help protect some of that function we feel like we're losing during that period.
It's so fascinating. And that is a new fact that I did not know about the glucose. I knew about the PET scans. I didn't know exactly what she was. I knew she was kind of looking at scans to see changes in the brain and matter and things like that and what shifts, but I didn't know about the study with the sugar. And what is so fascinating about the menopausal transition, and I we could debate this all day, the whole world could, whether it is a life stage or, something we need diagnosis from. The reality is it is a multi-organ system affecting process. This is not a reproductive, vaginal, genitourinary life transition. This is a full body health life transition. And I think when we put it in that framing and we think about sugar and metabolism and the effects of the brain, that explains why wearing a CGM is which is continuous glucose monitor, why wearing
Mhm.
an Aura ring, and entering how you feel after you eat certain foods, or why maybe GLP-1 is helpful for some people in this case, or metformin, or some of these other agents that are older that have been used for so long for metabolism. Menopause is complex and it affects every area of the body, and every area of a woman deserves attention, not just her ovaries and her uterus. So we've talked a bunch about uh, kind of the intersection, some of the more common symptoms at work. Um, there's a lot of stress for women during the menopausal transition. We talked about the midlife collision, the barges. What are you seeing in your practice around how workplace stressors or life stressors and then menopause kind of amplify one another? Like, what is that looking like when people come to see you?
The saddest word is it's synergy. It's like if you had one, it would feel not great. If you have the other, it feels not great. You put it together, it like multiplies on itself. And it's also the unknown of which is which. And so, one big thing, and I want to make sure we emphasize this, is that we know women in this period are putting everybody else above themselves, which is part of the stress. We are worried about everyone surrounding us, our employees, our employer, our family, if we have children, our children, if we have animals, our animals, they all seat above us in what we care about. And so because of that too, in our 40s to 60s, that's the time where women are or they have the lowest level of being physically active of any stage of any gender. So the 40 to 60-year-old female, because they're pouring into everyone else, they're not pouring into themselves, which adds another stressor to this level. Because when we don't get the physical activity we need, we are not only not benefiting our like metabolism, but we can cause a lot of stress. We know exercise, especially moderate exercise, even going for a really brisk walk, it helps with mood, it helps with stability, it helps with glucose metabolism. It is one of the most underutilized, I call it medicines we have out there. And we know we're not doing it because we're stressed about everything else.
Think it's such an interesting point, and I didn't think that's where we were gonna go. And I love that you brought out that stat because I don't think that's a stat that people talk about is the fact that we stop moving.
Mhm.
Um, I definitely lived it. I was like the chronic, I don't think I was healthy early in my life because I had eating issues, but I also was like a chronic treadmiller and a chronic mover and a lot of that really fueled my mood. But as I went through my 40s and got busy at my job and now I'm rounding the corner to 50 this year, I've had to force movement back into my life and I can tell the second that I do move. And so such an interesting stat and a thought, right? And yet at the same time, another place for us to feel like we're not living up to our potential or we're not showing up. It's another thing on our to-do list. So how in your practice are you motivating women in this age range to move? Like, what do you suggest to them?
Well, first of all, I think the internet makes us feel like we have to do something very intense and very vigorous to get results. And the truth is, it's just consistency. So finding something you actually like to do and doing it and in the minimal we know is 150 minutes a week. So that's 2.5 hours a week minimal. But here's how I tell you find the time. I tell every person to get on their phone and then go to the area of the phone that tells you how much time you're spending looking at social media and playing games on your phone. And then just taking a portion of that time and starting small and moving that towards your exercise box. So just being thoughtful about where we put our time can help open up how much time we have in the day. And it's not taking time away from the important task in life. This is your like kind of brain. My kids are at a certain age, so they call it brain rot. So brain rot time. When you're just your brain's tired, so you just want to scroll, doom scroll, and do something else. Well, that's not actually the healthiest thing we can do with our brain. This is a better use of our brain time. And it doesn't take us thinking. You can move without having to think at all. But a walk, dancing, like if you're a Zumba person, get to Zumba and you can do it at your house. You don't have to go in public. No one has to see you doing this. Picking up something heavy, it doesn't have to be like a 60-pound weight, but a 5 or 10 pound weight, and doing that once or twice a week. Just finding things that are easy for you to commit to.
What's your favorite form of movement?
So I'm a runner. I trail run. But it took me a long time to get into that. I started running in my late 30s because I always hated running. I thought running people were crazy. And But
Same.
I started very, very slow. And that's something I'd never given myself time to do. Instead of going out and being like, I'm going to run 3 miles, I did 20-minute walk runs for like months to get into it. And to tell you, that brought me from hating running and to when I turned 40, I did a 40-mile race. So I mean, nobody. You could have asked, my whole family thinks it's crazy. They're like, you hated running. You were never a runner. But when I did it slowly and consistently and without the pressure behind it, I actually love running now. And it's my favorite way when I actually do all my writing when I'm running because it's where my mental space is free to do those things. So it's like I'm multitasking. I'm working on my writing and being physically active at the same time.
I love the class. I don't know if anybody has heard of the class. It is this like mixed method somatic form of exercise where you like move your body, dance, yoga kind of movement, Pilates-esque moves, and then there's like a somatic release. So there's like shaking and vocalization. And for 40 bucks a month, you can literally do all the classes you want online. And it has taken my cardiac age down by 6 years. Just
Wow.
that was starting with like 15-minute practices. And I have so much fun doing it. And I don't know why I waited so long to do it, but I didn't start that until last year. So when I was 40, 48, 49. Before that, I've always been like a cardio junkie and I tried weights, heavy weights, and heavy protein. And I just bulked up and got humongous. And that was the end of that for me. But everybody has to find their thing. And I think that's such a great strategy that you brought up and not one that we talk about that much. Okay. Let's talk about when it comes to protecting our brains during this time, aside from menopausal hormone therapy, which we got into, and physical activity, which we've now talked about, are there other ways and things that women can be doing on a day-to-day basis to start protecting their brain health for the future?
Yes, and it's all the unsexy things that don't get airplay. That's what I call them. Like, it's not a quick pill and move on. It is just thinking about how we live our life. And actually, it's the ways to live our best life when we commit to it. So besides physical activity, which is one of our best longevity drugs out there, how we eat. And first of all, eating is important. Eating shouldn't be skipped. Eating shouldn't be erased. We are told often, and we've lived through multiple cultural changes telling us to be as thin as possible. And that's not good for anyone. If you're not eating and not nourishing your body, you're going to lose not only weight, you're going to lose bone and you're going to lose muscle mass, which is all going to make you that really frail person in the nursing home rather than that 9-year-old that's still running 5Ks. So eating is important, but what we put in our body is the most important thing. So eating a Mediterranean food type or a dash food type, which is all just saying eating a colorful vegetable and fruit filled, I hate the word diet, so eating plan. And making sure our proteins, if you eat animal proteins, they're lean. If you don't eat it, just make sure you're thinking thoughtful about getting the full range of enzymes that the animal protein has in it. So it's a little bit more thought, but it's there. And then carbs are still important. We have to be balanced. It's just whole grains and what kind of carbs we put in, not the ultra processed stuff that's easy to grab and that the world makes really easy for us. And it doesn't have to be expensive. So people often say, well, I can't do that. But a lot of times it's because we're thinking we need to order a food plan that they do it for us. But once you learn some simple recipes and simple tricks, it can be really easy and cost effective. You'll go out to eat less because you actually like what's at home. Hydrating. Your brain needs fluid. Your whole body does, but your brain needs fluid. So if you're not hydrated, when think about after you're on a plane and you feel like ick, if we're dehydrating to that state all the time, our brain is always going to feel like ick. Another one that's really important is stimulating your brain. And there's two really great ways to do that. First is stay social, find groups, go out with people. Even if you're an introvert, even going and reading together in a group and finding that introvert group. And that's the great thing about the internet. You can find these groups of people that you can kind of be like, I'm not really social, but I need to be out with people, and then occasionally we can talk. That's great. And also stimulating your brain, learning new things. We're never too old to learn something new. And every time we try to learn something new or do so, I always tell my mom, do puzzles, like do something that stimulates the brain in a way that it wasn't used to working. And the more you use it, it's a muscle, the more you won't lose it.
It's amazing. I started puzzling this year at 49. Don't ask me. Like, honestly, it came out of my husband and I looking for something to do together because he's a golfer, I'm a skier, a reader, an exerciser. Like I have all these things that I do that aren't necessarily his things, and we tend to like to watch mystery shows together, which is a sedentary activity, and go on walks, which is our walk. We look for something to do in common. Puzzling, which he hated and I love. And so now I obsessively do puzzles. This company, Pieceworks, has the most beautiful 1,000 piece puzzles. Some are super challenging, some are a little bit easier for me now, but they're still challenging. But my brain, I swear to God, like it's helping me feel superhuman with my cognition because it's pattern recognition. You end up looking at things differently to put the pieces together. And then the rest of your work looks and feels so much better. I mean, it's like night and day. So anybody out there who's looking for a hobby puzzle, and I'm also an introvert, so call me and we can puzzle together.
Exactly. You can be communal with your puzzles, and then maybe every once in a while be like, have you seen this piece?
I know
And
I
that
did.
be it. And you're socializing.
Like a puzzle club. Totally. Totally. Awesome. Um, Amazing. I know that sleep is also a really big one. And so we've had Dr. Shelby Harris, we've had Dr. Kat Letterly, we've had some wonderful, wonderful Dr. Andrea Matsumura, wonderful sleep experts. So we're not going to spend a whole bunch of time on sleep, but what do you recommend for women that are really struggling with sleep? Because we know that this affects everybody, men, women, children, what's your go-to to help people sleep?
Uh, well, so actually, the Menopause Society just came out with a pearl on this, and it was staggering because it said, which we know from talking with people, but now it's a stat, 40 to 69% of midlife women struggle with sleep. So this is almost all of us that are dealing with it. And they gave a fun name to the thing that we always talk about. It's the wake after sleep onset, so WASA, which is basically when you go to sleep, you wake up at 3 a.m. and you can't go back to sleep. So now it has a technical name for it and everything. And it had some, again, it's a practical pearl, so it had some ideas. And I think this one is underutilized, cognitive behavioral therapy, because we know this sleep, just like everything else, is so imperative to our brain, how it works, how it functions. When we don't sleep, of course, we're not going to be mentally on top of things like we normally would. So even if it isn't because of estrogen effects and hot flashes and night sweats, which a lot of it is, but even if it's not, cognitive behavioral therapy is an amazing way to help self-train yourself to not only help to alleviate the stresses before you go to sleep so they're not cycling in your head, but also how to go from having that fear of I woke up, oh no, now I'm up for the rest of the night and I can't go back to sleep and now I'm playing this in my head. It helps train you how to have that ease of brain so that you can fall back to sleep. So that's kind of it was showcased in this pearl, and I thought that's amazing because we're always looking for the melatonin or the medications that's going to help us sleep through the night. And they don't always work for us all. So we have to have backup game plans we can use because the last thing we want is the stress of thinking I'm going to wake up to be keeping us from going to sleep and keeping us from going back to sleep.
So anyone who's looking for practitioners who do CBTI, Dr. Shelby Harris and Dr. Andrea Matsimer are practitioners of CBTI, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. Take the word therapy out of your head. Don't think of this as something wrong with you. This is a reprogramming of habits. We have habits, right? This is just relearning the habit so that we can fall asleep and stay asleep better. And if you're looking for an entire education on that. Those are two great episodes inside the Fuchsia Tent to take a listen to. Let's talk about, because we're almost at time, practical
Ah,
strategy. I know it goes so fast, right? Practical strategies in the workplace. So obviously this is where I focus. A lot of the work that I do is in the workplace. Let's talk about working women. What are some of the things that they can do if they're struggling from brain fog or struggling with irritability, anxiety, any of these cognitive changes in the workplace?
I love this because I love coming to the practical at the end, so it can be the thing that you like remember that we talked about.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
First of all, a PSA, know that even when you're feeling this way, there's been studies done to look at how women who are in this phase where they feel like their brain's not working well versus men at this exact same phase. And we are still better multitaskers and cognitive function than men, even when we think we're at our worst. So just think about that in your head. When you're feeling like you're having a bad day and you think everyone can notice, you are still doing better than most of your male colleagues.
There's the mic
So,
drop moment right
yeah,
there. We just
yeah.
that's the podcast recording right there. Okay, keep going.
Okay.
Keep going.
But so you can feel like you did maybe a year or two before, and you can feel like you have strategies is the first one is we know we're not as good at multitasking at this point. So it's okay to single task. It's okay to just do one thing to change your system. Do one thing at a time. Don't feel like you need to jump between things here and put focused time towards things. And we also know we have cognitive windows where we know we're working our best. So once you've figured out what window that is, use it. Don't lose it to like random meetings that truthfully mean nothing to you. Try to stack those like brain numbing meetings for times that aren't your cognitive peak and protect your cognitive peak time for the thing that needs the most mental work. And then have a backup brain. Have a phone, get your phone and put in every alert for everything and don't think you're overdoing it with your alarm. It will save your life. Have a physical calendar where you can write everything down as a backup besides your online calendar and have visual notes around so you're looking and seeing. Don't assume you're going to remember everything like you used to do. You can't hold up the tabs in the computer like you did before at this time in this moment. So make external tabs so you have things you can look at and use so you don't feel like you're going to drop the ball like you may be stressed about right now. And then also making space in your day to do things that will help reset your brain. So maybe in those low cognitive times, doing breathing exercises to help center yourself and to help keep you from going down the spiral that we do that can lead us down into this, my brain isn't working. And once we get that cortisol spike, it's hard to come back down and use it. It's like that fight or flight. Once we're in fight or flight, we don't care about major, intellectual things. We're just trying to survive. And your brain doesn't realize when you get that stressed that you aren't just trying to survive against a tiger in the woods, you're just trying to get through your workday. So sometimes take those moments. It's like a minute or two and do breathing exercises. And actually, I have a course, and in my course, it's so important to me that we learn this. I spend time actually showing you exactly how to do the exercises. I do them for you. So you can see it doesn't, I mean, I may have looked silly, but I don't care. It doesn't look that silly, and this is what it is, and this is all it takes. And we have evidence that shows this is going to bring down that like cortisol level and just slim it down. Which again, when you're thinking, oh my gosh, just idea, like you're in a meeting and you think you're going to have a hot flash. Will I have a hot flash? I'm about to present. Will I have a hot flash? Will I forget everyone's name? You're spiking. And again, you're more likely to have those things happen because you're in fight or flight now, your brain's just trying to survive rather than when you were at your baseline of what you're actually able to do. So just kind of resetting yourself. Um, have a couple more. Oh, yeah, the brain finding, the word finding. If you can, if you feel comfortable, a lot of people, when they can't find the word, they try to rush through it because they want to get out of that moment. It's really helpful if you actually pause in that moment. Sit back. The pause really won't feel the same to you as it does to everyone else. You'll feel like you're taking 10 minutes of someone's time, but it's actually just 1 or 2 seconds. And that can allow you to either have that space to find the word, regroup, find a different word, or have the space to say, hey, lost my train of thought for a second. Can we recircle back to that in a second? And that's okay. Again, you'll hear men do this all the time. We've never had to do it, but now we're working again. We're still able to do more multitasking, but we're not as good as we were before. So we may have to use those phrases that people use in the workplace all the time. You've just never had to say it, so it feels really bad to do it. But it's okay to say, hey, let's circle back to that. Or I may need a minute to think about it. I'll get back to you with what I think is a good plan for this. And that is in workplace speak, absolutely okay.
So I think these are such great tips. These are a lot of things that I teach in burnout to break through and teach regularly. And just a note for everybody, multitasking isn't good for any of you. You should all be monotasking as much as possible because here's what we know. When you task switch, every 24 minutes, you hit a peak of doing a task. So if you're doing email and you hit 24 minutes, you're doing it almost 2 times faster than you were before. When you switch, that stops, you disrupt it, you become less effective. So task switching helps nobody. Monotasking better for everybody. And I love the reframe that at our best, at our worst, we're still firing on all cylinders compared to others in our group. So, where can people find you, Dr. Berg, if they are interested in working with you? What are the different ways you work with people? Tell us.
So I have a platform. It's Self 40 and it's named for female health prioritizer prioritizing yourself. So Self 40, self priority. And again, that circles back to the idea that you should be your own priority. And so I have a website which gives you information about what I'm writing, what I'm working on. And the main thing on there is I have a master class that dives in deep to each topic of what's going on in menopause, and you can do it at your own pace. So at self40.com, there's some great courses that can be really helpful to help educate. Because I really think if you understand what's going on, you feel less ashamed and alone. You can ask better questions of your physician, and you can participate in your own life in the best way possible. I am on social media because I think that's a fun and interesting way to get this information out. So at Self40 on Instagram, on Facebook, I have also LinkedIn to learn about what I'm doing. And I do a lot of short videos and short clips and carousels where I just give education and information and also show you what I'm working on. So if I wrote something new or if I'm speaking somewhere, you can engage and learn what's going on. And then you can always email me as well, sarah.berg@self40.com, and we can conversate and keep going.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here with us today and for talking about cognition and menopause and really giving the audience practical tips for how they can feel better during this time. And the reframes, I think, are going to be something that so many women take away from this. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody in the Fuchsia Tent. Dr. Berg, stay with me. If you're watching, please go take the survey, Menopause at Work, make your voice
Yes.
heard, make sure we have your data and what you need, or don't ask for things to change. We have to do research if we want things to change. All right, I'm going to get off my soapbox now and I'll talk to you all soon.